this is the iPhone SE, and this is the iPhone 8. The iPhone SE came out earlier this year in 2020, and this came out in 2017. 3 years of gap, but these phones are actually identical from the outside. They look the exact same design, same build quality, same everything about them, but these are actually two very different phones, especially on the inside. So if you're in the market for an iPhone 8 or an iPhone SE, which one should you get? That's what I'm going to be covering today and diving deeper into. So let's get right into it without wasting any time into the build quality, materials, and design. So both of these phones share the same exact design, and from the outside, they're the exact same phone. Both have excellent build quality, and I honestly think this phone has aged so well. Especially look at this back glass, right? The back looks so clean and simple. The single camera bump looks so refreshing, right? Nowadays, you've got these crazy camera setups with 4 or 5 cameras, and the camera design has just gotten so out of hand, but these two look so clean, neat, and simple. Both of them have the same IP67 water and dust resistant rating, and they're both made of the same aluminum and glass. Both of them fantastic. The only real differentiator is that the SE now has the Apple logo centered, whereas this has it up top and it has iPhone written as well. Otherwise, same exact phone. So moving on, let's talk about the display. So both of these have the same display as well. There's just been no changes between them. They're both satisfactory, but I would obviously have preferred that there have been some upgrades made to the iPhone SE, since it is 3 years newer now, thinking about it. Both of them have a 4.7-inch LCD screen, no AMOLED here. A 16:9 aspect ratio, a resolution of 750 into 1334, which gives you a 326 ppi. Now, this isn't the greatest, but honestly, it's hard to say that it's bad too, so it's a very average display. It gets plenty bright. It goes up to 625 nits of brightness. Never had an issue with it, even in direct sunlight. The one thing that is missing, though, that the iPhone 8 has, and this doesn't, is Force Touch. So this no longer has Force Touch. That's gone. You can long press and get the same effect, but this will give you Force Touch. So it's generally just a lot faster. So let me just do it. So look at that. Look at how much of a difference in timing it is. This takes way longer. It takes like 3 to 4 seconds, whereas this is just like instant. So it's a really, it's a bad thing it's gone, but honestly, it's been gone in the entire lineup. So really not much to say beyond that. Moving on, let's talk about the battery. Both of these have an identical 1,821 milliamp hour cell. In my testing, the iPhone SE is getting anywhere from about 3.5 to 5.5 hours of screen on time. My personal iPhone 8 does not get as much anymore, but this is a few years older, and the battery health on this is at 89%, whereas this is still at 100%, so that's probably what it is. When they're both brand new, I really think that they would really not make a difference, and Apple's website does say they get the same exact time of with battery life. So really that's all there is to say about it. The speakers. So the speakers on this are really good as well. Both of them have the same speaker setup, stereo speakers. They both sound excellent, and they have the same level of quality and the amount of loudness as well. So they get equally loud. I would show you guys a comparison clip, but there's no point. It's the same exact thing, so I don't want to waste your time. So let's go ahead and talk about software. Both of these can run iOS 14, but right now mine are running iOS 13.7. I just haven't had time to update all of my phones yet, and these two just haven't been updated. So the SE is most likely to get software updates all the way through 2024 or 2025, meaning it should get up to, theoretically, iOS 18 or 19, whereas the iPhone 8 is already 3 years old right now. So it's most likely going to get maybe another year or two at most. So that is a big advantage to it. But otherwise, software experience is very consistent throughout the both. You get the same feature set, the same smooth usability, and honestly, iOS just does a great job of making sure that the experience stays consistent throughout the entire range, and you can definitely tell here that both of them feel very similar when it comes to software. Now, where these two phones aren't similar anymore is performance. So that's where the iPhone SE just really shines through. Up until this point, both of these have just been kind of the same thing. But where the Apple has put all of the energy and effort into this phone has been the internals, the processor, and that is the A13 Bionic. That is the same processor as the flagship iPhone 11 Pro. The A13 Bionic is so good that it can easily beat the flagship Snapdragon 865 chips that came out way before the way after the A13 Bionic. The only real downfall with performance with both of these phones actually is that they don't have a decent amount of RAM. So the iPhone SE comes in with 3 gigs of RAM. The iPhone 8 comes with 2 gigs of RAM. Not enough at all, I think. Really an area where they skimped. iPhone does great optimization, but honestly, these apps are getting so intensive nowadays that you just need the extra size, right? You can't run everything on optimization. Right now, they do okay, but as apps just keep getting bigger and bigger and more heavy and intense, these just won't age well. I can guarantee you after a couple of years, both of these will have lots of trouble keeping more than 1 or 2 apps open at the same time, and they're just going to keep reloading apps. So that will become quite annoying, you know. That's really the only gripe performance-wise. At the time of the review, really, I'm telling you guys, both of these perform so well. I haven't noticed any issues on either of these phones, like no slowdowns, no hiccups. Both of them just operates so butter smooth. There's no lags, no crashes, and honestly, the only noteworthy thing with performance I've seen is that the iPhone 8 tends to get a little bit warmer when there's a higher load compared to the iPhone SE. Otherwise, very similar. So I did run a few benchmarks, not too many, just to the Geekbench 5 and Antutu. So on Geekbench 5, the iPhone SE got a single core score of 1,329 and a multi-core of 2,980. The iPhone 8 got 924 on single core and 2,265 on multi-core. Same score, same app, same iOS version. Moving on, let's look at Antutu. So this is the graphics benchmark, and the iPhone SE got 477,031, whereas the iPhone 8 only got 274,709. So I don't want to say half because it's not technically half, but about 40% difference with graphics performance. And that's just insane, right? So if you are a great gamer, the benchmarks are making it very clear the iPhone SE will lack in the graphics department. So if you do want a game, don't look at the 8 now, just go right to the iPhone SE. So that's something you should just try to keep in mind if that is something you enjoy doing on your phones. So finally, let's move on and talk about the camera. So this is a very interesting topic. So while hardware has mostly remained the same on this phone, camera has remained absolutely unchanged. Like, they're both the same exact camera, front and back. The rear camera is a 12 megapixel. The front camera is a 7 megapixel. You can shoot 4K 60 FPS on the back camera of both of them, but the fronts are locked to 1080 30 FPS. So what is actually unique to the iPhone 8? So what you've got is stereo audio recording. So it records audio in 2 channels. Extended dynamic range on 30 FPS videos. So if you're shooting videos in 30 FPS, there is a lot of dynamic range pulled in, and it's awesome. More portrait modes on the iPhone SE, and the front camera now also supports portrait modes, which the iPhone 8 did not. However, the biggest difference there is a big software change here, where the iPhone SE now has Smart HDR, the same thing that you find in the iPhone 11 lineup, and that is actually so important. So that is the Smart HDR is actually a post-processing layer. So what it does is when you take your photo, it will process that image, and post-processing with images is so important now because you get such a massive difference from it. And so here are a few examples to give you guys a better idea of what the cameras look like between the two of them. Remember, same sensor, just different background processing. So let's start off by looking at a outdoor photo, pretty good lighting, and what's fascinating to me is that these both are the same exact hardware, but the photos look quite different when you start looking into details. Number one, colors on the SE just looked so much better. They look a little bit washed out on the 8, but the SE, it just has so much more of a variance, and things look so much better. And even when you get into closer look at this leaf, the colors on the 8, I don't know how to explain them, but the edges between the changing of colors is so soft. Like, it doesn't have that real hard color variation, which the SE managed to capture, and I think it just looks so much better for it. So clearly the post-processing that the SE gets from the iPhone 11 is helping a lot. Moving on, let's look at another photo where the HDR from the iPhone 11s are really helping it out. Now, while both of these look quite similar, I think it's pretty clear that the iPhone SE does a much better job with the HDR. Just look at how much of a difference it is comparatively. The sky, it just doesn't look like the sky is overpowering everything right now. This wasn't a sunny day, so I couldn't get any direct sunlight shots, but this is pretty good to show exactly what I mean. The leaves look darker where they should be. The sky doesn't overpower things. It doesn't look hazy. It doesn't look like there's just a very low level of exposure on the darkness there. It just looks a lot better on the SE, and I have tested with a few sunlight photos. I just don't have one to compare it with the iPhone 8, but I can assure you that the HDR, Smart HDR on the iPhone SE does really, really well with sunlight. Moving on, here's another shot, and I mean, this is just like crazy. Like, look at them. Just remember, this is the same exact camera lens, setup, sensor, everything. This is just post-processing that is improved on the iPhone SE, and look at how much of a difference it is. Not only does the bamboo tree here look more vibrant on this photo, but look at the background, right? Like, it's not as blown out as the iPhone 8. Just, that's a huge difference. And not only is the background not blown out, look at the wall behind as well. There's just so much more light, and it looks a little bit brighter as well. So overall, as a package, it's undeniable that the iPhone SE does a lot better with camera stuff than the iPhone 8, especially when it comes to outdoor photography. Moving on, let's look at front cameras outside. So right off the bat, again, that HDR, that processing is doing an absolutely fantastic job. Just look at how it manages to keep the exposure controlled in the above my head, especially around those trees and the leaves. And then look at my face, my forehead. With the iPhone 8, things are just so crazy bright. Like, the exposure and highlights on that are crazy, whereas the iPhone SE looks so much more natural, and it's just a lot more of a acceptable picture compared to the iPhone 8. The iPhone 8 definitely does show that it's not doing the best job when it comes to HDR. So another thing that the iPhone SE does improve is that if you do use your front camera a lot, you'll be glad to know that the iPhone SE does include portrait mode on the camera, and you don't get that with the iPhone 8. Not only do you get portrait, you get all the same portrait effects from the iPhone 11 as well. So there's a whole bunch of them that I did take a screen recording of so you guys could see, right? You can switch between them, and they do a really good job. And this is again a showcase of how powerful that A13 Bionic chip is. That's all done on software. You know, the same exact front camera, remember, but the thing that it just looks so much more different and better. So, you know, the post-processing is a huge part of the final results. Moving on, let's move it to an indoor shot now. And this is where things start to get weird, because you'd expect the iPhone SE to do better, but at first glance, that's not the case. So when you look at the iPhone 8's photo, it's so much more brighter. You just can see a lot more in it compared to the iPhone SE. However, what I did notice is when you start to zoom in, that's when the troubles start with the iPhone 8. Just the details aren't there. So the SE is definitely a darker photo, but has way more detail. So it really will come to a toss-up which one you prefer. Honestly, I think that the image that's lighter and brighter is just good at the first glance. Like, I think that's a little bit better. But of course, you know, having detail is so much more important, because you can always tweak with the exposure, you know, and kind of mess with it in a photo editing app and get it to be a little bit brighter. But you can't bring in detail with a photo editing app. So, you know, it's a toss-up here. But I think right out of the camera, just first glance, first photo, the 8 looks pretty good. And, you know, this is not a isolated case. I took a bunch of photos in low lighting, and every single time the 8 looked brighter, but the SE had clearly way more detail and a more crisp image with way less noise. So you've got to make your decision on that. Personally, I think it's a toss-up. You know, detail is something you can't replace. So if you're looking for the objectively better photo, I think the iPhone SE is the one, because you get more detail and you can fix the exposure in a photo editing app. Moving on to the final photo, let's look at an indoor low light selfie, and this is just both of them are horrible. There's really no excuse for either of these. Like, these are bad quality photos. Like, they look bad. Like, I honestly don't know what to say beyond that, right? There's a really bad job with the exposure. My face is so dark, and my eyes are almost completely not visible at all because of the shadows. And just like, look at the iPhone 8 does even worse of a job with details. My shirt just looks like it has no detail in so many places. So the iPhone SE does a slightly better job because it has a little bit more detail, but honestly, both of these photos are hot garbage, and low light photography indoor is just something you want to avoid with both of these phones, to be very honest with you. So that wraps up the pictures. Let me move on and show you guys a couple of examples of what the video looked like on both of these phones. Alright guys, so here's the the rear camera of the iPhone 8 on the left and the iPhone SE on the right. Both of them are at 1080 30 FPS, 4K 30 FPS. I have it on this mode because I believe that the iPhone SE does support extended dynamic range on video if you're locked in at 30 FPS instead of 60. Otherwise, I usually film at 60, but I just wanted to see what it's looking like. And it definitely looks like HDR is doing a lot better job of controlling the sky over there and keeping the details in. So that's looking a lot better. You know, just overall definitely looking different. Now remember, both of these are the same exact sensor. So all of this, what you're seeing is post-processing, and that's what's really making the biggest difference here, is that the new A13 chip is just doing a fantastic job of making sure that things look good, and the exposure and everything with the dynamic range is a lot more controlled and realistic. I think, you know, it looks a lot better. So let me know what you guys think. The audio, again, just right out of these phones. So let me know what you guys think about them. All right, guys, so this is the front camera of the iPhone 8 on the left and the iPhone SE on the right. Both of them are looking quite a lot different, actually, on the screen. You know, the SE seems to be controlling the exposure a lot better. Both of them are recording at 1080p 30 FPS. That's the highest it goes on this, on the front camera. So let me know what it looks like and what the audio sounds like. I think they're clearly, the iPhone SE is looking a little bit better, especially with the lighting it's doing, but, you know, you never know. When you get it into post, things could look very different. All right, guys, this is the indoor camera test of the iPhone 8 on the left and the iPhone SE on the right. Both of them are looking okay. You know, the SE definitely seems to be doing just a little bit better. Both of these are very low lighting conditions, with the camera mode being 4K 30 FPS. Doesn't look that terrible on either of them, but again, you really don't know until you get into post. Again, sometimes struggling to find focus on certain things, but for the most part doing okay. Audio quality is right out of these as well, so let me know what you guys think. I think that the 8 is just struggling a little bit more, whereas the SE isn't. It's doing a little bit of a better job, which is weird because both are the same exact sensor, so there shouldn't be too much of a difference here, but there kind of seems to be, at least from what I'm seeing on the screen. All right, guys, this is the front camera of the iPhone 8 on the left and the iPhone SE on the right, and you know, both of them doing a pretty bad job overall. The SE is a little bit more bright, I can see, but a little bit less, I want to say detailed, but honestly the detail on the SE looks pretty trash as well. So, you know, when it comes to low light, these definitely are not doing the greatest job in the world. They can definitely do it with a lot of improvement, but let me know what you guys think. Right now, I honestly think that the clear winner here is the iPhone 8, which is weird because on the back camera, the SE seemed to be doing so much better. So weird things going on here. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. So that was everything from start to end. So let me give you guys a quick rundown of everything we covered. So the iPhone SE is a real curveball from Apple. It's got some of the newest specs, but it's also got some of the oldest ones as well. The iPhone 8 and SE have the exact same build quality, same design, same display, same battery, same speakers, and the same software experience. The iPhone SE only really distinguishes itself in performance, and which honestly is right now not that different because iOS just does that good of a job with the fluidity and just consistency between devices. The real performance differentiators will only be apparent when you're gaming or a couple years down the road when there's new iOS versions and the older CPU just won't be able to keep up with them. The camera is the really different thing here. While it's got the same hardware, picture quality has definitely improved thanks to smart HDR and the background processing. It's just really taken things up a step. Video has also really improved. The stereo sound has helped so much. Like the audio differences between the 8 and SE on video are mind-blowing. Like I purposefully left them as is. I could have edited the 8 to be a little bit louder so you guys could hear, but I did on purpose because I wanted to see how much of a difference there is in real life. So what's the final verdict? Which one should you get? Right now, the iPhone 8, the used prices are somewhere in the $250 to $300 range, depending on what you get, what condition it's in, and all that. The iPhone SE after tax comes to around $430 for the 64 gig variant. In terms of money, the question is, are you getting almost 2 times your value out of the iPhone SE compared to the 8? And the answer is, sadly, no, not right now. So if you buy them right now, the value proposition, I think, in the current moment is very similar. When you'd get your money's worth out of the iPhone SE is if you kept using it for 2-3 years. That's when you would get a real performance difference, where you'd get your money out of that A13 Bionic that you're investing into. So my final here is that if you're comfortable with buying used phones and you're only looking to use this phone for a year or two, get the iPhone 8. You'll save some money and you'll get a really good phone. But if you prefer a new phone with the new box, warranty, with all the accessories included in the box, and you just want to have something that's a little bit more worry-free, get the iPhone SE. But remember that you're not going to get the world's biggest difference compared to the two. The only real difference you'll see is 2-3 years down the line. And I don't know if people are going to be using this 2-3 years down the line or will change their phone. So comparing them both side by side, it'll just take a few more years to get the usage out of that A13 Bionic and to harness and extract the true value out of it when you compare it to the iPhone 8. So that's it for this one, guys. Let me know what you guys think about the iPhone 8 and iPhone SE. Which one would you opt for? Which one do you think is the better value? I honestly don't know which one I'd go for if I was in the comparative to each other. I'd probably just take the iPhone SE because it's new and I wouldn't have to worry about battery and stuff. But I'd love to know your viewpoints down in the comments below. And if you haven't already, be sure to follow me on social media. I'll have all my handles right here on the screen and of course in the description below as well. And be sure to subscribe to the channel for more iPhone SE content. The full review is coming very soon and I've got a couple of more videos planned down the pipeline for it. So be sure to sub for that. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll catch you in the next one.